You're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim. These are the headlines on the continent. Uganda's Bobi Wine is freed on bail following protests that have killed at least 37 people. The arrest of the pop star turned presidential candidate sparked the worst unrest in a decade. The conflict in Ethiopia rages on, federal government forces announcing their latest advances, while the TPLF fires rockets into a neighbouring region. The UN expects as many as 200,000 refugees to flee to Sudan. And as schools become a battleground in Cameroon's Anglophone crisis, our reporters speak to parents and teachers who've fled the separatist region to seek a safer learning environment for their children. Ugandan pop star and opposition presidential candidate Bobi Wine has been released on bail. His arrest this week triggered protests that led to at least 37 deaths in the country's worst unrest in a decade. Bobi Wine had been charged with possibly spreading coronavirus after holding a mass campaign rally, but the ruling party too has held large events. Human Rights Watch says COVID-19 restrictions are being used as a pretext by Ugandan authorities to quell opposition. Laurent Bashdecker reports.
Released on bail 2 days after his arrest, Bobi Wine appeared more determined than ever to keep on fighting.
I was violently arrested, tortured while in detention, threatened with death, but this did not break my resolve. I promise the people of Uganda that I will not abandon them on a journey we started together. We must finish it together, and that's when we have removed a dictator from power.
The singer-turned-politician was arrested Wednesday for allegedly violating coronavirus restrictions during his campaign rallies. This sparked 2 days of widespread unrest in Uganda as Wine's supporters took to the streets to demand his release. Some 350 people were arrested and dozens killed in violent clashes with security forces, who fired live rounds to disperse the crowds.
All the police is doing is attacking us. Bobi Wine's supposed to be campaigning and meeting the people, but now he's in jail again. They're just trying to waste his time.
Over the past 3 years, reggae and Afrobeat singer Bobi Wine has seen his popularity explode among Uganda's youth, who consider him the only voice speaking on behalf of their generation. Since his career switched to politics in 2018, Wine has been arrested multiple times, but his convictions and sense of defiance have remained intact. In July, he vowed to unseat Yoweri Museveni, who at 76 years old is running for a 6th consecutive presidential term.
Well, to Ethiopia now, and the federal government says its forces have seized 2 towns in Tigray. They're currently advancing on the region's capital, Mekele, from several directions. Earlier this week, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the operation was in its final phase. Meanwhile, Tigrayan forces fired rockets at the airport of the neighbouring Amhara region, heightening fears the internal conflict could spread to other parts of the country. The United Nations expects 200,000 refugees to flee into neighbouring Sudan. Maria Gerth-Niculescu is in Addis Ababa. She has the latest from the ground.
Well, it's the second time that airstrikes have been targeting Bahir Dar. Bahir Dar is the capital of the Amhara region, which is a neighboring Tigray. Regional authorities in the Amhara region are accusing the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the TPLF, the ruling party in the Tigray region, of carrying out these attacks. And the TPLF has confirmed, and it said that this attack was in response to the federal government actually bombing the University of Mekele. This comes as fighting continues throughout the Tigray region. In the north, we've seen federal and Tigrayan troops fighting for the city of Aksum. And in the south, we still have government forces that are trying to kind of continue and take back the city, the regional capital, Mekele. But as they advance towards Mekele, the routes are becoming increasingly mountainous and thus more and more difficult. All this information about the fighting is still very difficult to verify, of course, with communications still not working in Tigray, and journalists are still prevented from going to Tigray. What we know is that this conflict has already killed hundreds of people and that hospitals are now really struggling to treat the increasing number of wounded people coming in.
Well, campaigning has ended ahead of Sunday's presidential and legislative elections in Burkina Faso. Once a pocket of calm in a turbulent region, the landlocked country has been overwhelmed by the jihadist insurgency that's engulfed much of West Africa. 1/5 of Burkina Faso is ungovernable. And the UN says more than 1 million people have been displaced, leaving many unable to take part in this year's polls. All 12 candidates and incumbent President Roch Kabore have made security a key campaign promise. Now, in Cameroon, classrooms have literally become a battleground in the country's Anglophone crisis. Separatists in 2016 called for a boycott of the education system and have been blamed for a series of attacks on schools. The most brutal attack occurred on October 24th, when gunmen massacred 7 children in Kumba. It sparked a mass exodus from the northwest and southwest, but parents and teachers who fled have been welcomed in English-speaking schools in the Francophone region. Our correspondent sent us this report.
Students sing the Cameroonian national anthem on the esplanade of the school, which was specially created by Anglophone teachers for internally displaced English-speaking students.
Somebody who is poor is better than somebody who is dead.
Every day, Valeria Pierre, the principal of this makeshift establishment, encourages her students to study despite the challenges. The teacher moved from Tombel in the English-speaking southwest in 2018 after frequent attacks on schools there. He's now based here in the French-speaking city of Loum.
Most of the guys who are in the bushes, they knew us, so they were sending us text messages, they were writing us, and then they were even taking some people. They even took some teachers.
Teachers and thousands of students like 15-year-old Solange have fled kidnappings and violence. She says unidentified persons burned her guardian alive in front of her. Relieved to be back at school, she now hopes to realize her professional dreams.
I'm determined to go to school. Why? Because of my future, and I want to be a nurse, a medical doctor in future. When the crisis started, we stayed in the house for a year without going to school, and it affected us so much.
With renewed attacks, Anglophone schools have multiplied in Francophone zones. Housing remains a problem for the young displaced.
So let's take a look at
100 meters from the school are dormitories for about 60 Anglophone female students. Today they stand empty. Cameroonian authorities accuse the foundation in charge of the project of supporting separatists. Staff members deny this, but donors have been scared off. With their bank accounts closed, they can no longer provide students shelter.
those were cases that we took our time to select. We knew for sure that these are cases that we really need of help. And because of the fact that this place is locked, they don't have that help, and as such, they cannot go to school.
Memories of the Kumba school shooting, which left 7 children dead, are still strong here. The students are desperate for the war between Anglophone separatists and the government to end. They dream of safely returning to school in their hometowns and cities.
Now, 6 months ago, a major Ebola outbreak came to an end in eastern DR Congo. It claimed 2,287 lives and infected nearly 3,500 people. It's also left hundreds of orphan children in its wake. But with the help of NGOs, they're trying to rebuild their lives. Our correspondents Clément Bonoro and Juliette Dubois report from Butembo in northern Kivu.
Playing and spending time with other children, Lucy can finally enjoy these carefree moments. Her wounds, though, are still raw. Both her parents died of Ebola a year and a half ago.
Zenye mama alikufaka, alianja kagonjwa wakampeleka kusete. Akakufa, wakaenda mzika kule. Kisha pale na papa na akakufa. Wakaenda mzika kula tukwana bao.
Like most other children orphaned by the outbreak, Lucy was taken in by relatives. Her brother and his wife came from Bunia in the neighbouring Ituri province to take care of her and her 7 sisters.
Inakuwa kugumu sana juu tuko huko hatuna kazi. Kazi yetu ilikuwa naiko Bunia. Hiyo wote nishaka wakamata sawa watoto wangu juu wazazi bashaka kufa mimi ndio nabakia mzazi wao.
For children who've lost their parents to Ebola, going back to a normal life also means returning to school. Many have had to stop their education because they could no longer pay for school fees. Local NGOs have set up vocational training centres to help them.
Lucy now studies sewing with other teenage girls. She hopes that the 6-month course will help her to provide for her family.
Ninapenda kazi ya kushona juu mtu anajigusiaka kumakuta yake. Ninajua senda maiza hii masomo itanisaidia maisha yangu yote.
In addition to financing training courses, UNICEF and its partners provide psychological support to orphaned children. Many of them suffer from trauma and feel isolated.
Le fait d'apprendre à quelqu'un le métier les soulage encore davantage sur le plan psychologique. Et ça constitue aussi une sorte de thérapie à groupe, parce qu'il est formé à groupe avec les autres.
Lucy says she wants to open her own workshop after her training and sow her way to a brighter future.
And finally, we at France 24 would like to inform our viewers that some of our images and opening titles have been manipulated to spread disinformation in Kenya. France 24 reserves the right to press charges against those responsible. News consumption is changing in ways we never imagined, and that's why our fact-checking team has written this article to help. Check it out on France 24's Observer's website. And of course, you'll always find the genuine article right here and on www.france24.com. That's it from us. There's more news coming up. Stay tuned.
The world is ever changing. The news doesn't wait. That's why at France 24, we'll always be there to help make sense of world events. For the best international coverage, 24 hours a day, no matter what, France 24 is with you everywhere, all the time.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
I'm Gulliver Cragg, France 24's correspondent in Kiev. I'm forever crisscrossing Ukraine, Poland and other countries in the region to keep you up to date with all the news from Central and Eastern Europe. Join me on Live from Paris and in all France 24's news and magazine programmes.
Gulliver Cragg, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.